Taoiseach, months of opposition pressure, public anger and indeed protest dragged the government yesterday pretty much kicking and screaming into bringing in a temporary eviction ban. Even according to the government's own interesting figures yesterday, that still means, as welcome as that ban is belatedly, that 2,273 people will face eviction after the ban ends, which means that the level of homelessness is likely to be up to 13,000 to 14,000 people homeless, and of course we all know those figures in any event are an understatement. But evictions and homelessness are only the most horrible symptom of the deeper, more fundamental, underlying failure of the government to address the housing crisis and to deliver the affordable and public housing that we need to solve that crisis. The central bank decision today to change mortgage rules is yet another symptom of that failure. And indeed, we now risk repeating the mistakes of the Celtic Tiger, saddling another generation of mortgage holders with potentially crippling debts, particularly if interest rates go up. And all of this speaks to a situation where people who need a home are caught in a vice grips of extortionate, unaffordable rents, extortionate, unaffordable house prices, and a chronic lack of public and affordable housing. So what does the government intend to do? In the interests of being constructive, just as we propose the eviction ban to you, I want to make some proposals about what you do over the coming months. Number one, the state must buy up all the homes and properties of landlords who are selling up and exiting the market. That deals with the problem of landlords exiting and rental properties exiting. Systematic policy. I see Dara whispering to you that that's happening. Of the ones that I've raised in my area, not a single property has yet got over the line. So we want to see it happen. Buy up the developer and investor properties to ensure that every new property that is coming on the market is affordable. There is no point in developers delivering stuff that nobody can afford. So buy up those properties. An aggressive campaign to take vacant and derelict properties into use, including a punitive, which the one you brought in the budget is not, a punitive vacant property tax that forces them in. Establish now, because private building is starting to slow down, a state construction company to equip and support local authorities to directly deliver public and affordable housing. And finally, Minister, can we have the income limits that have been promised for more than a year raised so that all those who cannot afford these extortionate rents and house prices get the support of the state in being housed?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've made it very clear, I'll say it again, that housing is the single most important social issue facing our society and our country. In the last 2 years, we've dedicated a lot of resources, unprecedented financial resources, to dealing with housing. And the fundamental approach has to be to increase supply. Now, we've had to deal with COVID-19 and 2 lockdowns. That hit us hard. The 2 lockdowns hit construction hard. And then we have this exponential increase in prices brought about by the war in Ukraine, an inflationary cycle, all of which has dented confidence in builders and so on in terms of certainties into the future. Now, we intervened very quickly in terms of public contracts and tendering to enable builders to have more confidence in terms of public tenders to try and stabilise that situation. But that's the reality so far. Now, we will meet the target this year of about 25,000 houses built, but we need far more than that. And supply is key here, Deputy. And that means all of us have to be very focused on making sure that projects that are developed and designed and brought to the stage of being to the planning are allowed through, unless they're horrendous altogether. But I mean, by and large, we do not have the luxury to oppose projects because of either their mix. So you may not like private being mixed with social or affordable on public lands. In my view, We just have to get houses built now at a far faster rate than we're getting them built. And there are issues there which we'll deal with in terms of the review of the planning code and making sure it's more streamlined and can facilitate not just housing projects but infrastructure projects as well. The state is buying properties now that have been sold by landlords into the market where we have tenants on HAP, housing assistance payment, or on the RAS. And that is, the Minister has made that very clear to local authority managers. You may buy houses or apartments indeed of people that have been sold with people on RAS or on HAP. And that funding is there. It's there for local authorities to use. In terms of a blanket, I think local authorities do have to have some discretion. I think that's only sensible. But that policy is there. Also, 18,319 new social homes have been added to the social housing stock under this government. That's only up to Q2 of 2022. And that's including 11,301 new builds. That 6,000, in addition to that, 6,000 social homes were brought back in using the Voids programme. These were houses that were derelict or not refurbished. We moved very quickly to bring 6,000 houses back in. A further 2,500 close to that will happen in 2022. So the state is the biggest actor in the housing market right now. The state is intervening right across the board. Now you're saying let's have a national construction company.
Yeah.
I mean, that would take another year and a bit, believe me, to get established.
You what?
It would take another year and a half to get established and get running. We've just established the Land and Development Agency through legislation, which is dealing with a lot of development and to try and get housing going, both social, affordable and so forth, using state lands. So we already have an agency as an engine to get housing built as fast as we possibly can.
Richard Boyd Barrett.
According to the Dunleary-Rathdown Council's own figures, if they meet the targets or even slightly exceed the targets for social and affordable housing in my area, there will be more people on the housing list in 4 years' time than there are now. That's how inadequate the policy is. Okay? So we need additional measures beyond what you have done to date. On the issue of buying properties, are rent supplements included in the HAPs and RAS purchases? We need clarity on that. And people who are over the thresholds because you haven't raised the thresholds, who are left in absolute limbo if they are faced with eviction or indeed are already homeless. Furthermore, there are tens of thousands of units of planning permissions existing. Planning permissions is not the problem. The problem is, are they going to be built? And it's looking like the private sector may not deliver them. And secondly, will they be affordable when they are built? There is no point in selling houses at extortionate prices and saddling people with huge debts or extortionate rents that people can't afford. And that is why you need a straight construction company, you need the income limits raised, and what about a serious vacant property tax to actually force the empty units back into use?
First of all, we will be taking measures to force vacant units back into use and, more importantly, zoned land into use. And those measures, and the Minister for Finance and Housing are working on that specific point. I agree additional measures will have to be taken over and above what we've done already. We're constantly at this in respect of adding capacity and trying to get more houses built, and that will continue. In terms of the income thresholds, I said to you, they will be increased by the end of the year. They will be, in terms of social. That won't increase supply, but it will help people in certain circumstances to access social housing. But it's not necessarily going to increase supply itself. The LDA, the Land Development Agency, is working in terms of private developments that are not taking off or not starting, with a view to going in themselves and making sure that we can get them started and get houses built. That is happening. And those engagements have started. Anywhere we can see opportunities to get houses built, we will get them built. And we need the cooperation of everybody in that regard from here on in. That is very important. I don't say that in any flippant way or a sort of partisan way. It is just absolutely essential that we allow projects through now and get projects up and running.